It's Sandra here from Creating Spain, and today I want to show you something in Shortcuts a lot that in actual fact you could do in any other cutting software, to be quite honest. Um, but obviously this is the one that I'm using, but it's not strictly a tutorial on Shortcuts a lot. It is how to use your design skills to make more than one thing at a time without going to a heck of a lot of effort. Um, I created this simple flower design by creating a circle, elongating it to an oval, and replicating in a circular fashion. And I've done this heaps of times, so I'm not going to explain any further than that. If you want to find out how it's done, look through some of my older videos and I'm sure you'll find it somewhere. But the thing is, once you design that, you can do a multitude of things with it. And some people tend to forget that. And it's always a good idea, if you design a simple shape like this, to just keep it, to keep the file under a shape menu. So that when you want something which is able to be used as something else, you might have a stash of shapes that you can use. Now, what did I do to this to create what is the question? Well, you can see all these flowers over here. All I did with this was I went to the object menu and I went to the duplicate, and then I duplicated it in lines and then in rows, and then I grouped the lines. Now all I needed to do was to shift alternate lines over by a few points, and I just did that with the arrow key on the keyboard to offset one line against the other. And this gives you a general background pattern. So what could you do with this? You could actually cut this out of acetate or something else and use it as a stencil if you wanted that. Obviously you can use the single flower as a stamp if you cut it out in a suitable material. This is another version of that one there, but I've simply taken out random flowers so you get a more random effect. And again, this could be used either as a stencil, or indeed you could cut them all out, apply them to acetate and use them as a background stamp. Choice is yours. This one here, I have created rows of the flowers, and then I have moved them so that they are closer together just by using the arrow keys, and then welded the line. Then I repeated the line down and welded the line upwards, again using the arrow keys to move the lines just so the tiny amount of overlap there. This one here, I've done the same thing, but I've put a frame around it, so you could use that as an actual stand-alone piece of cutting if you wanted to. Now these here are quite interesting because all I've done here is take the flower row and then I've added an offset. I've grouped them and then added an offset, and basically that gave me this bit here. So I then took the offset that I had and offset that again and made it into a frame for these flowers. Now there's a very good reason for doing that, because you then have a rather pretty flower border stamp that you can use it in its entirety as a stamp. The other use that you might be able to use this one for is to make either children's bracelets or hairbands, that sort of thing. It depends on what you're cutting it out from. And in order to do that, all I did was I went to my letters and I made a letter T and a letter O, and I welded these letters onto the end of my bracelet shape here. And by doing that, you have a little tab shape and then you have the hole. In actual fact, I think I manually drew the O, but you could find one in your fonts, that wouldn't be a problem. Just choose a nice chunky font, and when you see the O, if need be, you can elongate the hole. Now the other thing that I wanted to mention, in case you haven't actually watched a previous video. I've been doing a lot of experimenting with stamp materials, and the latest thing that I found for stamp materials is actually children's table mats. And I bought it thinking, oh, maybe it won't cut very well, but in actual fact, it cuts extremely well. Now, I'm not talking about the very thin ones that I would use as a cutting mat for my silver bullet, actually. No, I'm talking about the ones that are kind of, they've got a plasticky film on the top with a design, and underneath is like a plastic foam. Now, I've normally bought not plastic foam, fun foam for cutting stamps, but it's a bit temperamental and yeah, it doesn't always give as clean an image as I like. But I found that this table mat material is absolutely drop dead brilliant for making stamps. Now you do need to cut the stamp so that it's design side down, unless you manage to peel the design off. If you cut it the other way up, unless it's firmly attached, and mine were cheapy ones and the top wasn't that firmly attached, it can sometimes wrinkle and peel, so it wouldn't give you a nice smooth surface. But if you do it face down onto the mat so the picture's not visible and you're facing the back of the mat, it cuts sheer perfection, absolutely brilliant. And if you go to my blog site, I'm going to show you some pictures of some stuff that I've actually cut out in it. And it stamps really well. But the beauty of it is that you can cut this out, this one here, and you can have the whole thing cut as a stamp, and the remnants of it can actually form a bracelet or something. So there's absolutely no wastage, because if you get it in a brightly coloured design, it just looks quite pretty as it is. Or indeed, you could cut it out and use it as card embellishments, depending on what patterns you find and whether you think the colour's going to look good. But what I found is ridiculous, really, was the Spanish version of Dora the Explorer. And I absolutely loathe and detest the look of the mat itself, but cut things out of it and it looks quite pretty. I'm quite pleased. And they're cheap. I think I paid €2.50 for a set of 4 mats and 4 coasters, and that'll give you quite a lot of cutting out. But I thought this idea for children's bracelets might be really handy for doing goodie bags for kids' parties and things. The other thing you could use it for is making reusable cake wraps. When you have the cake in its grease-proof wrapper, but then you want to put a pretty wrap around the outside of that, maybe for a party, you could make those out of it. And because it's a pretty sturdy material, you could just take them away afterwards and wash them, keep them and reuse them. I'm sure there's lots of other things that you could actually make out of this stuff, and if you think of any, let me know, because I'm always interested in new ideas. But I thought you might be interested in what I found so far. Anyway, thanks for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.